There you go.
How do you know that? Oh.
All right. Well, a remote won't work because it's a button you have to hit on the screen. And so, all right. So we're starting with verse 21. And remember, we talked about John the Baptist. We talked about going and looking for things that are good news, those things that are good news of great joy. And we're also looking for the times where Jesus and or his disciples are doing things that we might think are weird, not best practices, part of the church. So what we see is that Jesus is baptized, and we see God is kind of moving again. We were connecting the ripping open of heaven with like the connection in the Gospel of Matthew to the ripping of the curtain last week. So like heaven is open, God is speaking again, and all these things are going forward. Like the Spirit's on the move. And so we're seeing that happen now, and we're seeing Jesus. So this is, so this is just after Jesus gets a few of his disciples, and now he's going to, and after his baptism, and so we have his first healing here. So here we go. Verse 21 of chapter 1 of Mark. And they went to Capernaum, and when the Sabbath came, Jesus went into the synagogue and began to teach. And the people were amazed at his teachings, because he taught them as one who had authority, not as the teachers of the law. Remember that. We'll come back to that. Just then, a man in their synagogue who was possessed by an impure spirit, like a unclean, evil spirit is what impure means there. Impure spirit cried out, "What do you want with us, Jesus of this nowhere place called Nazareth? How have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." "Be quiet," Jesus said sternly. "Come out of him." And the impure spirit shook the man violently, and he came out of him in a shriek. And the people were all so amazed that they asked one another, "Who in the world is this? A new teaching? And listen to that authority. He even gives orders to those evil, impure spirits, and they obey him." News about him spread quickly over the whole region of Galilee. Okay, so what in that section, that we'll say that first paragraph there, it's what is interesting there to you guys? What kind of stands out? Anything? Yeah, Cheryl.
Well, the man that came into the synagogue said, "I know who you are, the Holy One of God."
Yeah. So
you would think that by saying that, he would understand and not have to have something taken out of him.
Well, I mean, it's the impure spirit, isn't it? Like that's who was possessed by the impure spirit. So a man came in who was possessed by an impure spirit, then said, "What do you want us?" So it's basically the impure spirit talking about there. What do you want us to? What do you want to do with us? Are you here to destroy us? Basically. So think about that for a second. So we are what? 10 verses. We are 30 seconds, 20 seconds in reading away from Jesus' baptism, and where God is talking and said, "This is my son in whom I'm well pleased." What do you think Mark is trying to say by having the impure spirit say, "What are you going to do with us?" What is he saying? What is he saying? What do you think? Anyone have any clues? All this is intentional. The Bible isn't written as this is what happened on Thursday. That's not how the Bible is written. You have to read the Bible like you read Harry Potter, or if you're into John Grisham or anything like that. Like it's written as a story, and all these parts play to get you to emotionally feel a certain way about the characters, okay, in the story. So what I think's going on here, when the impure spirit says, "What are you doing here, Jesus? What are you doing?" It's another time that Mark is setting up that Jesus is the true Messiah. That he is saying it first, that we've had God say, "This is my son in whom I love." And now we see that even the evil realms, the impure spirits, those evil spirits, are saying exactly the same thing, and it's not triumphant coming from them, but it's one of fear and trepidation that he is coming to destroy them, right? So as the readers here, and we're picking this up, that we're seeing this holistic view that all of the spiritual realm of the creation is noticing who this is walking around. That this isn't just a man, and that this is a special person that is walking forward, that has got the blessings of God, and the demons are fearful. Right? And so we're coming into this story looking at that. But that's not the only thing that's going on. What do the people say about Jesus right before that? What do the people say about Jesus?
Well, they were amazed at his teaching.
Yeah. They're amazed.
What's the difference between he taught them as one who had authority, not as teachers of the law?
So that's an interesting phrase, isn't it? That's like, how does that hit you guys? How does that hit you guys? Because everything I'm about to say about that is just educated opinion from Chris Asher. So like, what do you guys hear when you think that? What do you think of?
I think of the way that it hits me is that the authority, or people with authority, are higher than the teachers of the law.
Okay, so you're taking it kind of a hierarchical kind of standpoint, like
yes.
That. Okay, all right, that's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah, that's and that, I don't think that's too far away from where I am. Like does anyone else have anything like what does that mean for people to say, and for Mark to write down at this point in the story, for people to go, man, this guy speaks like has authority, unlike the teachers of the law, so like those Pharisees, all that stuff. What do you think?
Is that the difference between someone who's actually practiced the law as opposed to someone who just read it and teaches it? That's
actually, I wasn't thinking that at all, and that when we'll start getting to some stuff here really soon, where that view is not bad. Like that's the people that he's actually kind of practicing and kind of fulfilling the law, and so he's saying it from a closer standpoint to it than like the teachers of the law are. It's kind of what I'm hearing you saying.
Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's going to play in here in the next few chapters. What you're saying, here, Jack.
One thing I found in this commentary I'm reading here about what we're just talking about, it says here, I lost my place. They were amazed, for Jesus did not teach as the teachers of the law did. They always appealed to the interpretations of past rabbis, and were particularly adept at breaking down God's word into any number of legalistic regulations. Jesus instead always proclaimed the gospel of God.
Okay, so what Jack, were you guys able to hear Jack all right, or not at all? Okay, so what he said in the commentary he was reading was that he was faithfully preaching the good news, giving good news type of thing. That he's faithfully preached that where the Pharisees aren't, where they aren't teaching that at all. Yeah. So Cheryl.
I think that this is the beginning of Jesus explaining his purpose.
So this is the beginning of Jesus explaining his purpose, like, so coming with authority and all of that stuff. Yeah. Okay. So and it's not to just enforce the law. So so what Cheryl's saying is that he is coming as one that is kind of over a fulfillment of the law, as we would say, right? Like as Paul would say. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, Jack.
Yeah, I read that one other section right after, which is kind of interesting. He says, it's afterwards, what I read about in the commentary, he says, he quoted no experts or proclaimed the good news on his own authority. This was one of the first lessons the disciples had to learn, namely that Jesus, they were face to face with the final authority.
So what Jack said is that the disciples and all those people there were face to face with the final authority. Those are all interesting views, and how I'm kind of viewing it is when we look at the story structure again. So we have God opening up the heavens, then we have the calling of the disciples, right, where he just says, "Follow me." And they're like, all right, well, I guess that sounds like a good idea. I always think that's a weird story that they're just like, oh, they dropped their nets and followed him. But if you think about it, like in how it's presented here, that kind of makes sense. So that some of the disciples just drop their nets and follow him. And now he's teaching, and it's teaching as one who it's almost like voice of God type of stuff. You know, that he is got something kind of more going on there. So it's almost a recognition now of who this guy is, and even the normies are seeing it. Even the normies are seeing that there's something special here. And then we see that the evil realms are also that. So it's almost like when you look at it through the church hierarchy, I don't know, like you have God, and then the church with the disciples, and then you have like the normal people, like the laity, right? And then you have the evil realms, like all that stuff. This entire thing is kind of all recognizing in the power and authority and like in who Jesus is, that he's not just some bloke walking down the street. So I think all of you guys are thinking correct things too. But that's when I see it in the connection with the whole story, that's kind of what I'm seeing. Does that make sense? Does that make sense there? And so I think this first whole section of Mark is establishing who Jesus is and why we, over 2,000 years later, should be paying attention to him. Like and so I think that's what's going on there. Okay, so the demons recognize who he is, and Jesus tells them, "Shut up! like don't spill the beans yet," or something like that. It's weird. He tells them to be quiet, be quiet, and then he says, "Come out of him." And we see kind of his first miracle, right? That he's able to exorcise the demons, right? He's able to exorcise the demons out of him, and the demon came out of the man violently. It's all very interesting words, that it's not like it was like a peaceful surrender or anything like that. I don't really know what that means, but that Mark is very concise in how he words things, and the fact that he would use 10 or so words to write about how violent the demon comes out of him, I think is kind of trying to get us in. It may be foreshadowing what's Jesus on the cross. Maybe foreshadowing some of that we're starting to hear kind of trouble and heartache, and we'll kind of get into trouble and heartache near the end. I don't know. That's just my guess. And so, and then everyone was amazed. And they're like, what is this? And this is the point. A new teaching? Yeah, it's a new teaching. It's a new thing. God is starting something new. And he goes, it's a new teaching, and one that is from with authority, one that is from God. This is verse 27. So is this a new teaching, one with authority? And he's like, look, like this is different. The evil spirits, they actually listen and obey. And the news spread about him like wildfire all over the Galilean countryside. So I think this is still setting us up on how we are to see Jesus. That he's not just a normal bloke walking around over there with like just good teachings and all of that, but that he is something special, and it's being set up from the very beginning. Is what I think is kind of going on there. Before we go on, any comments about this section? Yeah, Jack.
One other thing I didn't hear, when we talk about telling these spirits to be quiet,
Yeah.
The thing is, they know. I mean, this is Satan and his minions. Your work at work.
Yeah.
They know who he is, and he's not ready to proclaim that yet.
Yeah.
So he's trying to zip them up so that they don't say anything to anybody else.
Yeah.
This time he's ready to proclaim who he is.
Yeah. So Jack is saying that what could be going on with the demons is that he doesn't want them to kind of ruin what's going on. Kind of what he's saying. So he's like, hey, shut up. Don't ruin it and all that stuff. Which that narrative helps things that are going to happen in the future a little bit more. So when we start coming up some of those things in the future, we'll see if that's still a good narrative to have or not. So that's because it's definitely a one, but we'll talk about those coming up. That's good. That's good. Okay. So, Jesus heals many, as my said. So verse 29. So we're still establishing who Jesus is. So verse 29. As soon as they left the synagogue, the church of the day, the Jewish church, they went with James and John to the home of Simon and Andrew. So we got the disciples here. Remember, Simon is Peter. Simon's mother-in-law was in bed with a fever, and they immediately told Jesus about her. So he went to her, took her by the hand, and helped her up. And the fever left her, and she began to wait on them. Now, come on, guys. Like, let her rest in the bed just a little bit, right? Like, it's like he heals her of the fever. It's like, come on, like this glass doesn't fill itself. Like but no, that's a joke. But that's not. But you could see that what's going on is we have Jesus healing now. So we get this third thing. So he's in charge of the evil realms. The evil realms are recognizing him. People are recognizing his authority. Now we see that he has the creator's ability to heal. Okay? That he's able to heal too. We're still establishing this. And he heals her so well that she gets going and doing what she always probably does. Is it Peter's mother or his mother-in-law? It's mother-in-law. So she just starts doing what she does again. It's like I think that's saying that it's like a complete healing, like it's not that it's like, oh, well, I feel better. It's like when your mom tries to give you some medicine, doesn't really work, you're like, oh yeah, it works. and all that stuff. So then verse 32, that evening after sunset, the people brought to Jesus all the sick and the demon-possessed. The whole town gathered at the door. You got to remember that was probably like maybe 100 people. Maybe. Like when the whole town showed up, it's a lot of people, but it's not thousands if they're all showing up at the door, right? So, that's just remember that. It's just, you got to take our mind and put it back then and not have it today. If Port St. Lucie showed up outside of my house, we would have problems like that. There would be too many people to handle, right? So everyone brought, and the sick and the demon possessed, the whole town gathered at the door, and Jesus healed many who had various diseases, and he drove out many demons, but he would not let the demons speak because they knew who he was. So that's going back to what Jack said, all that stuff. So he's not letting them speak there, but we see that he's kind of got this, I will call it authority. I think that word has been tainted in the last 50, 60 years, but he has the power of the Creator, the power of the Creator, and able to create, sustain, and heal life, right? That we're seeing that here. So Mark is establishing who Jesus is and what he can do. Did anyone have any thoughts? I didn't really let anyone talk during that section. Anyone have any thoughts I didn't go over right there? All right, moving right along. So verse 35, very early in the morning, while it was still dark, it must have been daylight savings time, right? Or whatever. Like that. And so very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. And Simon, Peter, Simon and his companions went to look for him. And when they found him, they exclaimed, Jesus, everyone is looking for you, man. And Jesus said, well, then let's go somewhere else, to a nearby village, so I can preach there also. That is why I have come. So he traveled throughout Galilee, preaching in their synagogues and driving out demons. All right, what's weird there? There's some weird stuff there. What's weird there?
That we're searching for him to convince him to go to other towns, and then he goes, that's why I'm here.
So Cheryl said it may be taken the 4 to suggest going to other towns, and Jesus said that's why he's here. That's interesting. The anything else interesting in this that you kind of found out? You can still see we're still establishing who Jesus is and what he does here, and so we're still establishing that. Yeah.
If you think the first thing that's happening here, and he's done this throughout his ministry.
Yeah.
He'll get to a point where he needs that little break, if you will.
Yeah.
Where he has time with his Father praying.
Yeah.
So that's a very key in his ministry that caused him to be able to refresh himself through prayer.
Yeah. So what Jack is saying, that you can see Jesus kind of goes off into prayer more than once. I mean, we even see it in, I can't remember if this is in Mark or not, but when he goes like to Gethsemane and all that stuff. So we're seeing all of that. Jack is saying that it's like a precursor in the story to how we see Jesus kind of respond in the future. That's kind of where I was going to go with that. Like that's definitely there. And I think Cheryl also has a good point about, like, we're also seeing how he is going to other towns as well. This is the first shade of something weird, though, and we're going to see it more as we go through here. We're actually going to see it in the very next place, but I want to lead into it right now. But
did those other little towns invite him to come and perform? I mean, when they heard all this stuff?
I don't know. I don't know if invite is the right word. I imagine, but it could be, though. I don't think they would have like kicked him out, because it says like right up there before, I can't remember the exact verse, but that the entire news about him was spreading throughout the countryside. Mm-hmm. They probably knew who he was, and it could have been like, hey, come over here, or he just kind of rolls in and they're like, oh my goodness, over here, heal my son, here, take, like do this. So I mean, they're definitely not kicking him out. Not yet, at least. Not yet. So So that's, I don't have a good answer for you on that, but I think it could be a combination of both. Combination, because they definitely know about them. Yeah. Let's see. All right, next story here. So verse 40. So we have all this establishing, and now here I didn't finish what I was talking about before.
No.
What's going on is Jesus does things that are odd. In the church, we always do these movements to where, like, we got to tell everyone, get people in, go do all this, try to drag everyone into the church and make sure it all happens. Jesus doesn't do that a lot of times. And so we will talk about those as they're coming up. Jesus tells people a lot of times, actually, don't tell anyone. Don't tell anyone. So let's look at the next one. And this is one of my favorite stories right here. I love it. So verse 40, a man with leprosy came to him and begged him on his knees, if you are willing, you can make me clean. And Jesus was indignant. He reached out his hand and touched the man. I am willing, he said, be clean. And immediately the leprosy left him and he was cleansed. All right, I want to talk about this for a little bit before we go on. This is when we truly start seeing something that I call good news. Okay? This is the first element to where we can separate the good news out of salvation. Because, so back then, how was leprosy spread, right? Or at least they thought how leprosy was spread.
Contact.
By touch, right? Like that was the no-no, right? If someone had leprosy, you do not touch them. We're not too dissimilar to where we are right now, right? You all have
Same thing.
but leprosy, that was something that was really really contagious. Leprosy that's like over in Asia now is most likely a very different disease than it was back then. It's not contagious to the touch, what we call leprosy now. So it was either something completely different, or they just didn't understand how it moved and they just thought it was by touch. So, but back then they believed that it was by touch. They believed that they knew that. All right. What does Jesus do to this guy first? He touches him. Now, to someone who probably hasn't been touched in years, what did that do to him? Like Cheryl said, it melts him. How much healing happened to him before the healing? Does that make sense? How much healing happened to him before Jesus actually said, you are clean? Like over there. Jack, you want to say something?
Possibly he recognized who Jesus was to a certain degree, even though he probably didn't know truly like before. But he had started building a faith that Jesus was the man of healing.
Yeah.
Which is obviously the faith is the next step up to actually healing and stuff like that. That was the beginning of the man's growth faith walk.
Yeah. So Jack said that was the beginning of that man's faith walk. I'm sure, like, Jesus already has a reputation of being a healer. So I think him coming up there to him, it's like, can you please heal me? And if you notice, what position is he when he asks to be healed?
On his knees.
Yeah, on his knees. Like that's.
Now, don't you suppose he was also startled when Jesus touched him? Because as you said, he hadn't been touched by anybody.
Yeah, most likely he hadn't been touched by anyone. So I think just the sheer fact, because Jesus touched him before he even said he would heal him. like, I think just having a bit of human contact, I think to that guy with leprosy, that human contact, even before the healing, was an immense amount of good news. And there's probably a bit of salvation and healing, maybe even more healing than the actual healing. That it was that suddenly he had like this human contact. And I think it's in that order in the story for a reason, to tell us that it's like, look, here's good news coming, and here's what the good news looks like. And here's what the good news looks like. Let's see, Cheryl.
And so some people miss this.
Next.
But, think of the first part of the person the man who had leprosy, when he said to Jesus before he even began.
Yeah.
If you are willing.
Yeah. If you are willing.
This goes back to God's will.
Yeah.
You know?
So Jack was saying, I mean, look at what the guy with leprosy said at beforehand. You know, if you are even willing to heal me, that's and kind of looking at God's will. So Cheryl.
Well, I love that Jesus said, I am willing.
Yeah.
And to me, that is deeper willing than just an average person willing. That is, I am willing.
Yeah.
With his power.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just with his power that he's doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But I also, and to me, that proves even more that Jesus is beyond anything else we have on earth. I mean, it's just,
So she's saying that, you know, Jesus being willing to do that is a huge thing. So I think that's one of the things that we see right away here, where we're getting a taste of how Jesus is working and how the healings and all of that are going to happen. He's not just a miracle worker. And what we've seen by Mark here, the reason why he is regarded as God is not because he's a miracle worker. That's just one facet. We've had heavens opening up. We've had people recognizing his authority. We've had evil people, the evil one, recognizing his authority as well. And so then we start seeing him heal. And so there's all these different facets to what is making about who Jesus is. So let's read this last paragraph.
Before you go on, my footnote, I've got an interesting footnote. It says, this is regarding verse 41. No person is too disgusting for God's touch in a sense. We are all people with leprosy because we have all been deformed by the ugliness of sin. But God is sending his son Jesus, has touched us, giving us the opportunity to be healed.
Yeah. That's
equating the leprosy to our sin.
Yeah, and that's good, and that's why I love that story so much, by how Jesus heals the man. That, you know, going back to the 23rd Psalm, is like, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, that you are with me.
Right.
You know, like that. I think that's like a testament to that kind of idea, what you just read there. You know. And that's really good, because I think it's how Jesus is doing things. That it's not just, one of the things I try to communicate a lot is that Jesus isn't just this guy who stands on top of the mountain and goes, you over there, you're all right. You know, that you're okay, you be healed and all that stuff. But no, he's like, even though I walk through dark valleys, with me, you know, and that's something that's really important to my outlook of the God story, is that it's a God who's Emmanuel, who's close, and so that was a good pointing out. All right, let's look at the last paragraph. This weirdness here. and it is weird. So Jesus sent him away at once with a strong warning. See that you don't tell this to anybody, but go, show yourself to the priest and offer the sacrifice that Moses commanded for your cleansing as a testimony to them. Instead, he went out and began to talk freely, spreading the news. As a result, Jesus could no longer enter a town openly, but stayed outside in lonely places. Yet the people still came to him from everywhere. This is like one of the number one youth group things to talk about. Like, why in the world is Jesus telling this man not to say anything? So
Because of what happened.
Okay, because of what happened. Yeah, and it kind of explains that, right?
It made him known to the people that were afraid of him. So they tried to keep him out.
Yeah. It's still odd, though. It's still...
So he's talking to a teenager, don't do this, so he knows they will.
Yeah. It's like talking to a teenager, don't do this. And so they just do it. Jack.
Then this takes on the continuation of what we talked about before, in that Jesus just, in Mark's gospel, he's just starting his ministry. He hasn't reached out to all the people he needs to reach out to get from point A to point B at that point.
Yeah.
So he's trying to avoid this guy going out and telling everybody, and it's like he just spoiled all good news, all my thunder, so to speak.
Yeah.
Trying to get that good news out to everybody from him directly, as opposed to word of mouth.
Yeah. So if you guys couldn't hear Jack, what he was saying, I'm gonna try to figure out how to mic the back row better. It's not your fault, Jack. I'm gonna try to mic everything better. What Jack was saying is that, like, by what we know in this story, that there's definitely an A to B track that Jesus is taking, and that by telling the man with leprosy not to say anything, and as Cheryl said, that they kind of, or Midge said that we end up seeing kind of what happens, right? That we end up seeing that he gets run out of the towns because he gets inundated by people and all that stuff. So that's all like I think kind of good standard views. Does anyone else have like a different opinion about that? Because that's kind of what I grew up with understanding. That's what I kind of grew up with understanding this.
Not a different opinion, but it just strikes me that he said, go show yourself to the priest. And in my footnote, it says that anytime a leper was cleansed or anybody was cleansed of a disease like that, they had to go to the priest, give an offering, and be verified, so to speak, that they were clean. Yeah. Well, that just tells to the priest, hey, Jesus is the one doing this healing.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when you look at it that way, we kind of talked a little bit ago about Jesus kind of being the fulfillment of laws. And when you kind of look at it through that way, it almost seems like he's wanting that to kind of be more so of what's done there. So I think that's very interesting. That's very interesting too. I think when we look at this, Jesus has utter confidence in who he is and what he's here to do. And I don't think he has to have everyone just fawning, trying to get something from him. Right? I kind of think that he knows, being the fulfillment of the law, that he knows what's going on. So he tells the guy to stay in those laws, as Ed just said. Go talk to the priest. Go talk to all of this stuff. Go talk to these people. And so I think he's I think he just knows kind of like who he is and what he's come to do. And so I think going forward, we'll see that kind of play out more. And I think this isn't a one-to-one comparison, but I think church stuff that we could see this too, where having the confidence of Jesus and knowing where the salvation and where the healing is coming from, we might be able to be a better service to the community, that rather than like doing everything we can to try to get everyone in the doors, but doing everything, realizing that, oh, it's Jesus that saves, and we can give that good news to people and all that stuff. So we'll see that play out as we come through this more and more. But I think all of this stuff is right, and I'm just trying to bring out different facets of all these stories, because all these words, especially by Mark, are incredibly intentional, because he's trying to write something super fast. And we'll see that as we kind of continue on. I don't know. Yeah, we got like 6 minutes. Let's see. What is the next one? We may have to talk about it more later, but I'll go ahead and read chapter 2, verse 1. So, a few days later, when Jesus again entered Capernaum, the people heard that he had come home, and they gathered in such large numbers that there was just no room left, not even outside the door, and he preached the word to them. Some men came, bringing to him a paralyzed man carried by the 4 of them. Since they could not get him to Jesus because of the crowd, they made an opening in the roof above Jesus by digging through it, and then lowered the mat the man was lying on. When Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralyzed man, "Son, your sins are forgiven." Now, you guys know what you got to do as soon as you hear Jesus say that, right? You got to clutch your pearls and like grab something. He's like, oh, like he said, your sins are forgiven. Like that's, you got to clutch your pearls, because that's what everyone did. Now, some teachers of the law were sitting there thinking to themselves, why does this fellow talk like that? He's blaspheming. Who can forgive sins but God alone? And immediately, Jesus knew in his spirit what they were thinking in their hearts, and he said to them, why are you thinking these things? Which is easier to say to this paralyzed man, your sins are forgiven, or to say, get up, take your mat, and walk? But I want you to know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins. And so he said to the man, I tell you, get up, take your mat, and go home. And he got up, took his mat, and walked out in full view of them all. This amazed everyone, and they praised God, saying, we have never seen anything like this. So we've got like 4 minutes. We will definitely talk about this more next week. But what hits you in this? I
have a real concern with verse 5. Jesus said, your sins are forgiven. So does that equate to the fact that if I have cancer, it's because I'm so sinful?
Oh, man, I wasn't even thinking that. I don't think that's what's going on. That's interesting. I wasn't even thinking that. I don't think that's what's being said here. I don't think that's.
Well, he's saying your sins are forgiven.
Yeah, but that's not.
To me, that says that's why he's paralyzed, because he was sinful.
But that's also. So you're making me think about new things. I didn't even think about that.
Next week.
Go study.
Let's see. Let me see if I can hash it out. We got like 3 minutes. Let me see if I can hash it out just a little bit here. That's interesting, because that would definitely have been the prevailing view of the people at that time, that you are if something had happened, because we end up seeing in one of the Gospels, I can't remember which one right now, but the disciples asking Jesus, who sinned, the father or him, that why he's lame on the side of the road, right? What you're talking about, Ed, would have definitely been the prevailing view of the time. And Jesus shuts that down, that view. He's like, no, this was happening so that you could see God at work, that you could see God happening. Working there. And that's definitely not like an Orthodox Lutheran position, but we're trying to discover Orthodox Lutheran. We're not trying to look at the gospel through the Orthodox Lutheran, right? So that's really, man, I haven't thought about it with that lens ever. That's incredible. You kind of blew my mind a little bit there. So I think I don't think that is Jesus' intention, but man, they could be playing off of that. Gosh, I haven't even thought about that. That's cool. They could be playing off of that. I don't think that that's Jesus' intention, because he separates the forgiveness from the actual healing. Kind of like the healing of the paralyzed man. Like there was a lot of healing done with the touch beforehand, and then he was healed afterwards. It wasn't like the touch was the healing. Like I don't think the forgiveness is the same as the healing of the ailment. I don't think that. Here, Cheryl wants to say something.
When he did the man with leprosy, the touch, I think, was to heal the mind.
Yeah. Well, heal his heart, right?
And then the words were to heal the body. In this case, I think where he's talking about how faithful they are, and they lower him, and he says, you are forgiven, he is healing his soul.
Yeah. So Cheryl's saying that here he's healing his soul, which that's kind of what is a shade of what I was talking about. But that's really interesting, Ed. That's really so. Let's on that.
Is the initial goal of Jesus forgiving his sins, and just the sidebar was all the rest of it went away?
So I kind of think that's how the story plays out. That's how the story is told. And so that's what's so interesting about this. And I'm actually going to connect this next week with everyone going, look, this man speaks with such authority that the teachers of the law do not do. I think the forgiveness of sins here is connected to that phrase. And so I'll let you guys think about that for a week as we go through all of that. And hopefully I can remember next week to actually have resolution on that little bit that I just said.
We'll send you a text.
Yeah, you can remind me. You can remind me if I don't. But everyone's doing okay? Everyone's doing good?
Yes.
I'm glad that Joanne's able to hear with her device some, and looking forward to that happening more. That's great. Everyone's doing pretty good here. And
just say a prayer for all the police officers and people of authority as the next week or so is looking to
we were talking about that with before we started here, but I was talking to Augustine last night, and then Ed's son he's a detective. Augustine works for the sheriff's department in West Palm Beach, and they're telling Augustine that they're worried about riots and all of that stuff, no matter who wins. They're getting ready for all of that. So we're in a disgusting moment right now where we have been fomenting division for a long time, and the only people that can deal with that is us. And by us being civil and looking past what we view as sins and indiscretions and being like Jesus and first leading before actually correcting anyone's thinking, first leading with, you are forgiven. Because if we look at our neighbors on our heart saying you are forgiven before you need to be correct, I think it softens our own heart towards them. And
Yes.
so we are the ones that have to lead that. We have to lead that. And so we cannot fall to what our leaders are doing, fomenting division and causing pain and hurt in other people. So that's, it's a good reminder for us all. So many blessings to you all. May God continue to open his scriptures to you, that you could see him working faithfully in your life, and that you could bring peace to everywhere you go. And good news, right? Amen.
Right.
Great seeing
Thank
everyone here. Ed, yeah, we're done. So Ed, we're still working on the keyboard.
Okay.
I want to think about it. So you had the edge. I'm sorry, I'm having a meeting with Ed in front of everyone here, but you had the edge of it coming up all the way. Could you give me like 4 or 6 inches, and then it'd be like the door that would raise for the sheet music? So it's like flat. So you have the back of it here, and then it's flat, and then the thing that would raise up, like 4 or 6 inches.
Need something above the keyboard?
Above the keyboard. So there's like a flat spot that doesn't move. Because what I'm thinking is we could then put like an under the counter light in that spot underneath it. And then there'd
Well, I would have to have some kind of support behind the music stand part to support the hinges for the music stand that's going to fold down. So there would be something there, but you want it maybe 4 or 5 inches above the keyboard for the light.
Yeah, maybe I guess I need to look at your drawing again. But I was just kind of thinking last night, we're still working on what we're getting, but I was going to give you more homework. Sorry, we got multiple irons in the fire, and I have Ed.
Yeah. It's going to be a little bit hard to do that.
Okay, if it's too hard,
because that's going to raise that music stand way up.
Okay. How tall is the music? Music.
Pardon?
How big is the music rest part? Is that like 8 inches?
It's probably 12 inches or a little more than that, because that little flap at the top is what, when it falls down, that's what comes down and covers the front of the keyboard.
Okay. Yeah.
Pulls out.
Okay. It's a good design. It's a good design. So.
Well, I understand what you're saying. Let me think about that. The only problem is if we can raise it, we can raise the whole thing up. It just raises the sheet music stand up pretty high.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So
let me think about it.
All right. We're still working on which way we do it, but we're that would work too. That would work too. So I appreciate all the time you're spending on that, Ed.
No problem.
All right. I appreciate it.
Talk to you later.
We'll see you guys.
Bye.
We'll see you.
Turn the other one off now.
15-year-old is 6